Let's navigate, let's elevate. Neuroversa, give to celebrate. Come and join the tribe, let's unite and thrive. Grow, shine, expand your gifted mind. Let's navigate, let's elevate. Neuroversa, give to celebrate. Come and join the tribe, let's unite and thrive. Grow, shine, expand your gifted mind.
Welcome to Navigating Our Neuroverse, the podcast where we discuss all things neurodiversity and where lived experience meets the latest evidence. I'm Tanya Bright, your host, a neurodiversity coach, consultant, and mental health practitioner with both professional training. I have a master's in neuroscience and mental health and personal lived experience of neurodivergence. With over 92% of information online about ADHD and autism and other neurodivergence being inaccurate or outdated, this show is here to cut through the noise to bring you science-backed insights, compassionate support, and real conversations that empower neurodivergent individuals, whether diagnosed, self-diagnosed, or still exploring, not just to cope, but to thrive. This podcast is also about creating a more neuro-inclusive society, where difference is not just accepted, but understood and valued. I invite you to listen with an open mind and without judgment. Views shared by guests are their own and may not always reflect mine or that of the podcast, and that's okay. We're here to learn together. Welcome to the Navigating Our Neuroverse podcast. This is episode 7. My name is Tanya Bright, your host, and today we're unpacking something that's been bothering me now for a little while. It's the way that neurodiversity is being spoken about in some spaces. Now, we're seeing a rise in visibility, which is brilliant. Beyond brilliant. But we're also seeing a rise in people using neurodiversity related terms as trends, as hashtags, as ways to look inclusive without actually understanding what these words mean. And here's the truth. These aren't just buzzwords. They carry the weight of real experiences, identities, and in many cases, trauma. When we reduce neurodivergent terms to something trendy or simplified, we really water down the reality of what it means to live with these differences. And worse, we risk speaking over the people who live it daily. So guys, in part 1 today, I'm going to be covering some evidence-based information surrounding some of these neurodiversity buzzwords so that you actually truly understand what they mean. Part 2, I'm going to share some tools, and part 3 will be sharing my personal insights. So part 1, guys, let's look at some of this evidence. So neurodiversity is not a synonym for creative thinker. It's a paradigm, and the term was coined by Judy Singer in the late 90s, and it demands we shift systems, not individuals. Masking is not about pretending. It's a survival strategy, and research shows it's linked to burnout, anxiety, trigger warning, guys, even suicidality in autistic individuals. Now, what about executive dysfunction? It's not laziness. It's a Sorry, guys, that's my dog in the background if you heard that shaking. You might see her as well. She's making a little cameo appearance. Sorry, back to it. Executive dysfunction, guys, not laziness. That's what I was saying. It's a neurological difference seen in ADHD, seen in autism, seen in many other neurodivergence, and it can absolutely affect everything from memory to emotional regulation, planning, adaptability. It is really impactful. So it's really important to truly understand what it means and how it can affect somebody. Stimming. Now, stimming isn't something to suppress. It's a way of self-regulation. It is helpful with sensory and emotional experiences. And we need to encourage stimming so that an individual can feel safe and not be told to stop flapping their hands, for example, to stop spinning around, to stop whatever it might be, okay? But actually really encourage it. Sensory processing. Now, sensory processing differences are real And for some, they can be physically painful. Now, 90% of autistic individuals experience these differences. What about rejection sensitivity dysphoria, shortened to RSD? Guys, it isn't overreacting. It's a very real emotional response that many people that are ADHD describe as intense pain triggered by perceived as well as actual rejection. And it's really important to know about that perceived word as well. So, guys, words matter. And these are just some of those buzzwords that are around at the moment. Another one I heard recently was someone just using hyperfocus. Again, it's great to understand and to be learning and using these words and normalizing them, but not to a point because it's trendy in air bunnies or quote unquote. And it just can really water down somebody's experience that can be really detrimentally impacting on a daily basis. We need to make sure we use these words with respect, with clarity, and with care. Guys, join me in part 2 as we share some tools to deepen your understanding and to avoid harm. Okay, guys, welcome back to part 2. So I'm going to share some tools that are really, really, really important when it comes to neurodiversity terminology. Guys, pause before you post or speak. Ask yourself, do I truly understand this term? If I'm using it to describe someone else, am I doing so with permission, care, and accuracy? And remember, guys, it's so important because what somebody experiences might not be what someone else experiences that is neurodivergent. So it's really important to remember that if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. And the same goes for ADHD and other neurodivergents as well. My second, that's because I said second and started reading the next word, stay. My second tool is stay curious, not performative. So guys, learn from lived experience, follow different neurodivergent creators, read books written by different neurodivergent individuals, attend trainings. Don't assume you know just because you've heard a word on Instagram or other social media. Now, guys, as I like to keep telling you and reminding you, 92% of what is out there on the internet is incorrect. So it's so important to make sure that, whoever you're learning from or listening to or watching, that they are a credible source. So really important to bear that in mind. My third tool, guys, is be an ally and not a spokesperson. So what do I mean by that? If you're not neurodivergent, advocate. Don't center yourself. Use your voice to amplify, not replace neurodivergent voices. And, it's absolutely fine. And we need more and more advocacy. We absolutely do. But again, just be, really make sure you're advocating and using real advocacy terminology and tones. So we know you're supporting and not just, using it as a buzzword, using it because neurodiversity is quite trending at the moment in terms of a topic. My next tool is respect to individual experience. So again, going back to, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. That's exactly it, guys. No two autistic people are the same. No two ADHDers are the same. Labels are fantastic as a starting point because it gives reasons, but it's not a definition of someone's full identity. And I know this isn't personal insight bit, but even recently I hear so many people saying, oh, well, all autistic people have social anxiety. Well, they don't. Some can, some might on one day and not on another day. And, so it's so important not to generalize somebody's experience. The next point, guys, is to offer adjustments, not assumptions. It's quite nice to organically link to what I just said. Ask somebody, don't just assume, but ask what helps you to thrive, not your label says this, so you need this adjustment. So it's supporting everyone, asking them what they need. And that is so key. And as a result, that individual person will feel really heard and seen. Next one, guys, is call it in gently. Now, what do I mean by that? If you hear someone misuse a term, try and say something like, that's an important term and it has real meaning for a lot of people. Would you be open to hearing a bit more about it? Again, not a personal insight, but this is also another way that I work with if that sort of thing happens is, for example, if somebody says, oh, we're all a bit ADHD, aren't we? I'll validate what they say because I don't want to invalidate them. However, I'll say, yes, however, and I'll add on, the actual truth, which is we're not all a bit ADHD. We might have some traits, we've probably got traits of absolutely every diagnosis in the DSM-5. However, it's, you need to understand that to actually be diagnosed ADHD, you have to have at least 5 of the 9 criteria and have them show up in 2 different aspects of life on a day-to-day basis. So yes, you might be driven by a motor, which is one of the diagnosis criteria. But if that's the only criteria that you fit or meet, and that might happen, a couple of times a week, then it's not really fair to say that we're all a bit ADHD. Hopefully that makes sense. Guys, that was part 2. Join me for part 3 when I'm going to talk a little bit more about personal insights, although I've already done that a little bit. Never mind. See you there in a minute. Guys, welcome to part 3. And I'm going to share more about my personal insights to neurodiversity buzzwords. So I work in this space every day. I advocate, I coach, I train, I educate, and I'm also a person who is part of the neurodivergent community. And I've seen how often these terms are really thrown around by people who don't actually understand what they mean. Sometimes it's well-intentioned, sometimes it's performative, and sometimes it's used in ways that can actually really harm the very people they claim to be supporting. So I've had many clients come to me after hearing their traits minimized. I mean, I gave this as an example already, but even this past week alone, somebody saying, oh yeah, we're all a bit ADHD, aren't we? And, it's just really, really harmful and damaging. And, neurodivergent people already generally have very low self-esteem from being unsupported in society. And hearing things like that can just be so damaging, really, really, really damaging. And it just really invalidates their experience and how challenging being neurodivergent can actually be. Other things I've heard is individuals being told that they shouldn't be struggling because their label is being celebrated or being more well known, or, well, you have reasonable adjustments at work or school, don't you? Somebody who is visibly disabled will never be told, well, I mean, I hope so, but would never be told something like, oh, you don't really need a ramp to get up those stairs, do you? If they're in a wheelchair or, some other sort of disability where they actually really need that ramp. So it's about being really, really, really mindful. But also, guys, other areas that makes me sort of worried more than anything is more and more, again, autism, ADHD and other neurodivergents are being well known, and that's fantastic. But what happens also with that is not just performative, but actually monetization. And I've seen many sort of 7-day courses to become an ADHD coach or an autism coach, do a 30-day course to become a master certified, not masters, but master certified, neurodiversity coach. Guys, I promise you, that is not enough time to have enough knowledge to help somebody. That's where I say the word, it worries me, because if you are neurodivergent or, whether diagnosed or self-diagnosed and seeking support, and you go to somebody who's not able to call themselves an ADHD coach because they've done a 7-day course, I'm really concerned as to what help they're going to be able to truly help you with based on such little information and little experience. Again, that's generalized. I can't say that for everyone, you know. However, guys, also be mindful of the word master. It's not the same as having a master's. A master's, guys, is a huge, huge cost investment, time investment, years of studying to really understand and be able to then give that help and support to, for example, with my master's, it is neuroscience and mental health. It is so I can really, really help individuals who are neurologically or have a neurological condition. And I niched into neurodivergence. But so it just so scares me, guys, that there's so many courses out there that, again, just be really mindful of the credibility of, you know, who's written the course. Again with coaches, just again be so mindful. Please do your research. Again, for me, it comes from a place of worry. I do not want somebody to just trying to monetize off of your weaknesses. The same goes for things like supplementation. A different company saying, you know, for example, mushrooms, whether legal or illegal, not saying whichever ones, but very much so mushrooms. Lion's mane, we'll go with lion's mane for the sake of the podcast right now. Lion's mane helps with ADHD traits. Guys, there's actually no proven research on this. So again, you know, please don't just go with what's on the internet. Please do some research. Please also always come to me. I'm always more than happy to answer questions if you aren't sure. If you've, you know, just please come and ask me. Absolutely. So, guys, just to sort of round up really, is you don't have to know everything as a neurodivergent individual or as somebody who is, you know, a parent trying to learn more or, you know, an educator, let's say a teacher trying to support your neurodivergent students. But you have enough to care, enough to learn. And it's so important to keep learning and unlearn. It's so important because we have to do a lot of unlearning the traditional, which I always say, you know, at the start of my webinars and things like that, is we have to do a lot of unlearning to then be able to have that space to relearn. Guys, neurodiversity is not a trend. It's not a checklist. It's not a branding opportunity. We are a real bunch of people with very real needs, insights, and challenges. And the neurodiversity community, guys, deserves better than surface level advocacy. So I hope this has been helpful, guys. I hope this has been a helpful episode to just help you to sort of pause. And if you found something insightful, you know, just really lean into that. Do a little bit more research. You know, stay open to unlearning, reflect on the language that you use. It's so important to use real neuro-affirming language, real advocacy. And it's not about just saying the right thing. It's about meaning it and following that up with action as well. So thank you so much, guys, for listening. And, you know, please write in. I would love to hear from you, whether it's a personal insight, whether it's feedback on the podcast. Please write in and stay thriving or start thriving if you aren't yet. And if I can help you with that, please drop me a message, Tanya@thebrightcenter.com or Tanya_Tanya, oh my goodness, I can't talk. Tanya_neurodiversity coach on Instagram. And I really look forward to speaking to you all again very soon. Bye for now.